Okay. Hi, Andrew. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. Sorry?
Just give him to speak for like 10 seconds.
Oh yeah. Check. Can you please yeah.
Check. Test. Check.
That
Test.
yeah, good. Yeah. Okay, I have your presentation here. You have two presentations, right? The second one is the guidelines presentation, and the first one is the consumer awareness.
That's correct. Yes.
Right. So I'll just share it. Okay. Andrew, did you want to share your screen, maybe?
Unfortunately, I don't have it on the same computer.
Okay.
As
Yeah,
the
I
Zoom.
can do this. You can see the screen now, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So yeah, I have this.
Perfect.
Did you need the presenter view? If we are doing
This is perfect.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, then I think I will have to stay here to move the slides.
Okay.
Are you good to start? Yeah. No, he can go first. He's online. Yeah. Okay. Why don't we give it like 5 minutes maybe? We could start, right? Good morning, everyone. Let me start recording. It is already recording. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to session 2B, Autonomous Vehicles and Advanced Vehicle Technology. So if you are in the wrong session, now is the time to switch rooms. So for those who don't know me, I'm Navoda Rillagodage. I currently work as a part-time research assistant with CASP, and I'm also a PhD student at the University of Manitoba. So we have great presentations, 3 great presentations today. Our first speaker is Andrew Phillips. So let me introduce Andrew to you. Andrew has worked in the Federal Public Service since 2007, serving in various policy functions with Health Canada, the Private Council Office, and Transport Canada. Since 2017, Andrew has managed Transport Canada's Connected and Automated Vehicle Safety Programs team. Andrew and his team are responsible for the development of guidelines and other policy tools to support the safe testing and deployment of connected and automated vehicles in Canada, working in close collaboration with a variety of domestic and international counterparts. Andrew holds a Master of Arts degree in Political Science from Simon Fraser University and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from the University of Alberta. So Andrew, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you can still hear me okay.
Yes.
That's great. So it's a pleasure to be with you virtually. Unfortunately, my plane did not leave Toronto Pearson yesterday as planned, and it was a very, very late trip back to Ottawa today or last night, but very happy to be presenting our findings to you electronically. So this is a bit of a double feature for me today. I'll be presenting on two topics, and the first is our research survey on consumer awareness and confidence in driver assistance and automated vehicle technologies. So I think we can move forward 2 slides actually, please. Next slide, that's possible. And next slide. So since 2018, TC has undertaken, or Transport Canada, I should say, has undertaken a wide range of activities to support the safe testing and market deployment of new vehicle technologies, including advanced driver assistance systems and higher automated vehicle technologies still under development. So this work includes amendments to the Motor Vehicle Safety Act in 2018, which incorporated new enforcement tools as well as regulatory flexibilities to support innovation while ensuring that safety isn't compromised. So other activities have included the publication of a wide range of guidelines on testing and development of automated driving systems, as well as associated issues like cybersecurity. So this work to adapt our safety regime in support of emerging technologies is an ongoing process, and our public opinion research will help to inform additional work in the future, including consumer awareness programming, as well as future regulatory work on driver assistance and higher automation technologies. So next slide. So a bit about the study. The study was conducted by Ipsos between December 2020 and January 2021. This was a bilingual study with a representative sample of Canadians aged 18 and over. The study built on Transport Canada's first public opinion research project on this topic, conducted in February 2019, so actually almost 2 years earlier. The 2020 study included many of the same questions from our 2019 survey so that we could establish comparable data and identify any trends that may be forming. So organizations like Canadian Automobile Association and more recently JD Power have also done similar research to gauge Canadians' opinion of these technologies. Although our research is focused on different questions than they did, the general trends we have observed are consistent with these domestic surveys. And I should note, as well as consistent with findings in other countries like the United States and the European Union. As you will see, there are some potential areas for improvement in terms of enhancing consumer knowledge of new vehicle technologies, and still a fair degree of apprehension towards automated vehicles by the public. And this is something we found, as I mentioned, to be quite consistent with other regions of the world. Next slide, please. So given that advanced driver assistance systems are becoming more present on Canadian roads, we wanted to understand how they're being received by Canadians and whether they are having the safety benefits that we might expect, So this includes examining whether Canadians are aware of these technologies, how many Canadians are using them, how Canadians feel about them and go about using them, and how Canadians learn about them. We also wanted to get a sense of how Canadians might receive more highly automated vehicles, or perceive them rather, when they eventually become available. So due to time constraints, I won't provide an exhaustive overview of all our findings, but will note a few key findings today. Next slide. So starting with familiarity. So in terms of familiarity with ADAS technologies, 50% of all survey respondents describe themselves as being somewhat or very familiar with ADAS technologies. Men were more likely than women to consider themselves familiar with ADAS. And I should note that familiarity was slightly higher among older respondents, but this was not a particularly strong trend. Higher income earners were also likely to be familiar with ADAS technology. That's not particularly surprising given that higher income earners are more likely to drive and own a vehicle, including newer vehicles that are more likely to incorporate these technologies. Next slide. Although only about half of respondents consider themselves to be familiar with ADAS, 85% of respondents had heard of at least one ADAS feature measured in the survey. So this was unchanged from our 2019 POR project as well. In general, respondents were more likely to have heard of features that included a visible warning or display, with backup cameras and blind spot warnings being the most commonly recognized. Between 2019 and 2020, there was a modest increase in respondents' recognition of some technologies, particularly automatic emergency braking and adaptive cruise control, perhaps reflecting the increased prevalence of these technologies as a standard feature in new vehicles, as well as the increased marketing of these technologies that we're seeing by manufacturers. Next slide. So in 2020, between 26% and 46% of respondents had experience using one of the following 6 ADAS technologies we identify here on this slide, with using defined as being a driver or a passenger vehicle with an ADAS feature. Most of these features saw a slight increase between 2019 and 2020. It is possible that respondents underreported their usage, especially for features that only
again, it's a slight underestimation, but you can see that with the reduced speed limits, we have a significant reduction going all the way up to 25.
I'm sorry, was there a question there or?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can go ahead now.
Okay. So it is possible that respondents did underreport their usage, especially for features that only intervene in the case of imminent collisions. So drivers and passengers may have been unaware that the vehicle they were in had features like automatic emergency braking and forward collision warning. If the driver is driving safely, as one would hope. Next slide, please. Among respondents who are aware of these ADAS features, 24% indicated that they had either turned them off or wanted to turn them off at some point. So this rate varied by feature, with adaptive cruise control the most likely to be turned off and blind spot warning the least likely. The desire to turn off a feature is not necessarily a safety concern that we note, though. So as some features are not designed to operate in all conditions, such as adaptive cruise control, which is intended for highways and not city driving. This does raise a bit of concern, though, particularly if the feature is known to enhance safety, and further research may be warranted to understand what compels consumers to do this and how this can be addressed. Next slide. So respondents were generally found to have a positive outlook towards ADAS technologies. About 70% believed that when used properly, ADAS technologies would help to make Canadian roads safer. Respondents were also asked whether a vehicle's fitment with specific ADAS features would be an important factor in the decision to purchase or lease a vehicle. In most cases, a majority of respondents felt that the inclusion of these technologies would be somewhat or very important in their decision. Blind spot warning was the feature that was most likely to be important, with 69% of respondents saying it would matter in their decision, and adaptive cruise control was the least important of these features at 47%. Next slide. While respondents did have a positive outlook towards ADAS technologies, they did note challenges learning about them. Only 16% of respondents indicated that information on the proper use of ADAS technologies was easily accessible, while about 1/3 felt that it was not easily accessible. However, more than half of respondents either chose neither agree nor disagree, or I don't know. So this may suggest that most respondents have not actually tried looking for information about ADAS, as it's perhaps something not relevant to them at this time. When asked about what source of information they use or would use, there's clearly an appetite to use resources other than kind of the traditional driver's manual to learn about ADAS features. Notably, only 10% said they would actually use information from the car manual, whereas larger numbers of respondents selected internet sources. Next slide. So turning to automated vehicles now, we also wanted to find out which portions of the Canadian population described themselves as being familiar with the technology. In 2020, 41% of respondents were somewhat or very familiar with automated vehicles. This was an increase from 2019, when only 34% indicated they were familiar with AV technology. Like with ADAS technologies, there were variations in familiarity across demographic groups. Men were more likely than women to be familiar with automated vehicles, and younger respondents were more likely than older respondents to be familiar. I should also note that there was very little notable difference in familiarity across regions of the country. When asked specific questions about their perceptions of automated vehicles, respondents' answers varied greatly, but never converged into a majority on any opinion. 41% agreed that automated vehicles would help keep the road safer for everyone. You'll recall this figure was 70% for ADAS technologies. 30% said that they would feel comfortable riding in a fully automated vehicle, and 17% agreed that automated vehicles are cyber secure. So as previously mentioned, surveys conducted by other organizations such as CAA as well as AAA in the United States have also found a high degree of apprehension towards automated vehicles. Notably, in our study, a large portion of respondents did not give definitive answers to the 3 questions. Either they were not sure or they neither agreed nor disagreed. This might indicate that many respondents did not feel informed enough about automated vehicles to have an opinion. Next slide. So moving forward, Transport Canada will use our survey results to inform a wide range of programming, including, as mentioned, our future regulatory work on ADAS technologies, which were subject to a recent pre-regulatory consultation by the department. Another project we've launched is a new website dedicated to promoting consumer awareness of ADAS technologies. So this webpage, canada.ca/driver assistance, provides an overview currently of 26 different driver assistance technologies, including information on their functionality and their capabilities and limitations. In 2020, I should also mention that the department also ran a social media campaign to promote educational videos on the safe use of ADAS technologies. And despite a very modest budget, the campaign garnered almost 2.5 million views. So one of the department's most successful social media campaigns to date. So that, in short, is the findings from our public opinion research. And I look forward to getting your questions. I don't know if the plan is to do that now or to continue with the second presentation first.
I think we will do the questions now. If the audience has any questions, I can bring the mic. If you could raise hand if you have a question. Oh, you do?
Oh. Thanks for your presentation. Yeah, hi. Thanks for your presentation. I know this technology and AC and autonomous vehicles are really new and it's ongoing, and we should see more technology in the future. But we have pros and cons of this kind of technology, especially for now that our infrastructure are not ready for these vehicles. But my question is about whether we have some results or research for the interaction of AC and first respond vehicles, because they are really important, and I just don't know what is the results of the interaction of AC and the first respond vehicles. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Certainly, this is an emerging area of research where, what are the best practices for automated vehicles to safely engage with other road users, but also, very importantly, first responders. Currently, at this time, we're very active. Transport Canada is very active in discussions at the United Nations in the World Forum for the Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, looking at what the functional performance requirements will look like for safe driving behavior. And certainly a very important subset of that includes those safe interactions. I would say that, the research is ongoing to understand what exactly are the desired behaviors and how does communication differ between an automated vehicle and another road user and, say, a conventional driver and other road users. So it's not something that we're going to have answers to overnight. It's very much an ongoing process.
Thank you.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for the presentation. I missed the first few minutes, so I'm sorry if you already mentioned this, but just curious, are there any instances where you find ADAS potentially harmful? So for example, we're conducting a study with population with neurological conditions, And the preliminary evidence right now is looking like it might actually decrease their driving performance from like distraction, from like the lights and blinkers showing up. And anything on that?
Yeah, great question. I can say that Transport Canada has a number of human factors experts that are looking at, the various human factors considerations of safely engaging with ADAS technologies. And certainly, there's a number of issues, right? Making sure that these things are designed to be intuitive, easy to use, and making sure that folks can understand the capabilities and limitations and are not overwhelmed and not distracted by them. I think it's one of those areas where standards are being worked on to cover these various topics. The science is still forming, and eventually I anticipate that some of these standards will make their way into regulations. But the technology is so new that we're still kind of figuring out what are the best practices there. But certainly, we're focused on providing guidance when there's sufficient evidence for that, and then of course as the technical standards come about, we'll develop regulations. And an example of those guidance includes guidelines on user interfaces and making sure that people aren't prone to distraction from user interfaces. So this was a series of guidelines that we published a couple of years ago here at Transport Canada.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. So Andrew, we could move to the next presentation, perhaps. Yeah.
Great. So I guess we can move to the next slide. So my second presentation will provide an overview of our work to support the safe testing of automated vehicles on public roads. As noted in my first presentation, our testing guidelines are just one piece of a broader range of work, which includes legislative and regulatory modernization efforts and other guidance we've produced in recent years to support the safe development of new vehicle technologies. As our public opinion research showed, there is still a high degree of wariness towards automated vehicles. And for this reason, it's imperative that we develop a really robust and responsive safety regime that instills Canadians' confidence in automated vehicle technology. So this starts with ensuring that safety is prioritized when conducting public road trials, as these testing activities will represent the first time that many Canadians will be exposed to the technology, and may be a very critical experience for informing their opinion of the technology moving forward. Next slide. Our first version of the trial guidelines was published in June 2018, and the development of this document involved consultation with industry and other stakeholders, and close collaboration with provincial and territorial governments through the Canadian Council of Motor Transport Administrators, or CCMTA. The CCMTA actually has a dedicated working group for working on automated vehicle issues. So we collaborated very closely with that team in particular, and continue to do so today on various projects. So the guidelines were developed with three key objectives in mind. One is to promote Canada as a destination for safe testing. The second is to clearly outline the roles and responsibilities of various orders of government in approving and facilitating trials of ADS-equipped vehicles. And thirdly, we want to establish an inventory of safety best practices that trial organizations should consider when operating in Canada, and that provinces, who are largely responsible for authorizing public road trials, can incorporate in their authorization regimes as necessary. Next slide. So 4 years, of course, is a very long time in the rapidly evolving field of motor vehicle technology. And since the publication of our guidelines in 2018, we've seen on-road testing and demonstrations of automated vehicles expand to 4 jurisdictions in Canada. So this is Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and Alberta. And 2 other provinces, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, are also working to implement legislation and regulations to support public testing in the near future. On average, I'd say we've seen roughly 10 to 15 on-road trials of automated driving systems occurring every year since the publication of our guidelines in 2018. Of course, COVID-19 has played a role in reducing testing activity due to public health measures. So it's possible we might have seen numbers that were a bit higher if it wasn't for the pandemic. These on-road trials have been diverse in nature, including different vehicle types and mobility use cases, including low-speed shuttles, conventional automated passenger vehicles, as well as medium-duty delivery trucks. We've also seen the growth of test facilities with investments being made in new facilities for developing and refining connected and automated vehicle technologies before they're tested on public roads. So this includes, for example, the development of Area XO, a large test facility here in Ottawa. We are also actually upgrading Transport Canada's own track test facilities in Blainville, Quebec, to incorporate new traffic intersections to test ADAS and automated driving system technologies. So for these reasons, we felt it was time to issue an updated document that incorporates the many lessons learned from testing activities in Canada, as well as best practices identified from testing that's occurred around the world. Next slide, please. So turning to the overall structure of our guidance document, and I apologize if this is a little difficult to read on your end, the scope of the document continues to be the same, focused on the testing of automated driving systems or vehicles with automation capabilities of SAE level 3 and above, i.e. where the vehicle can undertake all aspects of the driving task for a sustained period. So the guidelines are organized according to the general phases of conducting a public road test, looking at considerations that should be taken pre-trial, during the course of the trial, and post-trial activities. The document as a whole includes a very detailed inventory of best practices. However, it's important to note that these best practices are meant to be flexible in nature. Each trial will be very different based on the use cases being examined and the specific capabilities and limitations of the technology in question. As such, not all best practices will necessarily apply to each trial. Excuse me, just one second. In terms of a quick overview, the first chapter explains the roles and responsibilities of different orders of government in authorizing tests. The second chapter looks at the pre-trial phase, looking at factors such as route selection and evaluating the route or test environment, the development of safety management plans to guide the day-to-day conduct of a test on public roads, as well as training of safety drivers and the importance of engaging with local communities and first responders in preparing for testing. The third chapter focuses on various best practices to consider during the trial. For example, trial organizations may need to adapt safety management strategies as the trial progresses based on information that's obtained during initial testing. We also discussed the need to take a graduated approach to testing. So this refers to the gradual introduction of complexity and risk when testing an automated driving system, recognizing that the development is an iterative and cyclical process. So this chapter also discusses important considerations for passenger safety and accessibility. Sorry, bear with me. We also discussed testing without an onboard safety driver or seeking to introduce passengers to the trial, both of which require additional safety precautions. We're also seeing a growing interest in trial organizations looking to conduct testing using varying degrees of remote support. And as a result, we've included a discussion on various types of remote support and safety challenges associated with this type of testing, which I'll explore a little bit later as well. Finally, the fourth chapter focuses on factors to consider after the trial is completed, such as the development and sharing of final reports. We also include a number of other helpful resources in separate annexes, such as other standards that are under development and in industry guidance. And we've also included a chapter on testing of low-speed shuttles, which I'll touch on a bit later as well. Next slide. So in the interest of time, I won't provide an exhaustive overview of our updates to the document, but I will note a few key areas. One of the key issues we noted in working with trial organizations to date was the rapid change taking place in the automotive industry and the emergence of many new technology firms and new vehicle manufacturers. Many of these organizations, particularly international ones, are much less familiar with Canada's federal system of governance and the shared responsibility for road safety. So as such, these organizations can sometimes find it difficult to navigate the authorization process, particularly if it involves importing a vehicle or using licensed connectivity devices, which also involve engagement with the federal government, with federal departments in addition to provincial and territorial departments. So for this reason, we've taken special care in this version of the document to provide additional information on the authorization process and provided a quick checklist to help guide trial organizations to support their compliance with these requirements. Another modification is that we encourage trial organizations to now publish a safety assessment report based on Transport Canada's other automated vehicle guidance that's been developed since 2018. So the purpose of a safety assessment document is to clearly outline the various capabilities and limitations of the vehicle and the validation work that has been undertaken to date by the developer. In our updated guidance, we encourage developers to share these reports with provincial and territorial officials who will be authorizing a test project. This guidance was based on feedback from some provinces who suggested that the submission of such a report can really help to expedite their review of testing proposals by proactively answering many of their questions. Our updated guidance also includes greater detail regarding the use of safety drivers, including safety driver roles and responsibilities and safety driver training. We've actually seen a proliferation of detailed industry guidance on this topic from organizations in the past few years, and we make reference to those in the guidance. So this includes, for example, industry guidance on driver training that has been produced by the Automated Vehicle Safety Consortium. Throughout the document, we also include a number of best practices based on lessons learned from specific test projects we've seen in Canada in our engagement with those trial organizations. So this includes, for example, considerations for evaluating test routes involving low-speed automated shuttles, which may operate in diverse controlled and mixed environments, mixed traffic environments. So some key observations include accounting for things like cold weather operations and its impact on battery power and route sustainability. Planning for wildlife and other hazards that may be encountered on a trial route. We had some very aggressive geese during one trial here in Ottawa. And planning for the seasonal variability we see in Canada, which may require digital maps of a test environment to be updated over the course of a trial to account for things like snowbanks that may appear or disappear, the loss of foliage may impact lighting, or obstruct different road signage. And these things could impact the localization and navigation of the vehicle. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a bit about a specific annex that we've added at the back of the document focused on low-speed automated shuttles. So many automated vehicle trials to date in Canada have involved low-speed automated shuttles. There's been a lot of interest in these vehicles, particularly acting as a first mile, last mile transit solution to bridge gaps in underserved areas for public transit users. And Transport Canada believes that there's great value in promoting safe trials of automated shuttles. And as mentioned, we've incorporated this annex to address some of the unique safety considerations involved. So this annex was developed based on research and consultations with various international organizations, as well as groups in Canada involved with shuttle testing. It outlines best practices that are specific to automated shuttle testing and takes into account three unique safety considerations. One is vehicle design, and the automated shuttle's design is often a novel configuration that may not conform to a prescribed vehicle class in Canada's motor vehicle safety regulations, and thus may not comply with standards related to occupant protection, crash avoidance, and crashworthiness. Another factor is the types of organizations conducting the testing. So many shuttle manufacturers are actually partnering with other organizations to lead testing operations. So we feel it's very important that there's a strong relationship between the vehicle developer and all stakeholders involved in testing throughout the trial to ensure that there's a clear understanding of the vehicle's capabilities and limitations and to address any issues that may arise. Another factor is the inclusion of members of the public in testing activities. So members of the public tend to be invited to ride in these vehicles as passengers so that companies can promote public acceptance of automated technologies, gauge consumer reactions to the vehicle, and test the viability of use cases and potential business models. So next slide, please. I'd also like to touch on the document's discussion on remote support applications, as well as this is an area where Transport Canada has also provided some unique analysis to the international dialogue on automated vehicle testing. So here's a quick overview of some of the key types of remote support that we've identified from our research on the topic. In the first column, you see the dispatcher role. A remote dispatcher may be involved in making strategic driving decisions, such as planning and selecting routes, and directing the vehicle to embark to a specific destination. Another role is the remote monitor function. So this is a term we've used at Transport Canada to describe someone who may be continuously monitoring the vehicle to support passenger safety and security. A remote monitor may also communicate with passengers to address any questions or concerns or engage emergency responders in response to a safety or security event. In the third column, you see a remote assistant. This is a new term which refers to providing information and advice to the automated driving system when assistance is requested with regards to maneuver planning. So some examples of this might include providing guidance on navigating an intersection or deviating around a roadway obstruction. Finally, you have remote driving, which involves remotely undertaking some or all aspects of the driving task, either on a temporary or prolonged period on a temporary basis for a prolonged period of time during the vehicle's journey. Our remote driver can also be situated within line of sight of the vehicle or beyond line of sight. So of these types of remote assistance, it's remote driving where clearly the safety considerations are the greatest. And recognizing that remote support technology is still evolving, a recommendation to other jurisdictions in Canada has been that remote driving on public roads or remote driving with passengers should only be pursued if clear evidence of safety can be provided by the developer. Now, we want to be clear that we're not saying that remote driving should not occur, only that developers should be ready to provide a very strong safety case before such activities are permitted on public roads or with members of the public on board. So next slide, please. So while it's very early days and we may not have a lot of documented evidence explicitly demonstrating the benefits of remote support for automated vehicles, we do recognize that there are a number of potential benefits that we've identified in our scanning of literature on the topic. So as alluded to earlier, a remote dispatcher or remote monitor, for example, may help to enhance the efficiency of the automated vehicle's operation, passenger safety and security, and information and service provision to passengers. Remote assistance and remote driving applications in turn may enhance safety by helping to overcome current limitations of ADS technology as they continue to be refined and developed. And so this includes, of course, when an ADS exits its operational design domain due to a change, for example, in weather, or encounters a rare or particularly complex scenario, such as maybe a collision or a roadway work site. Next slide, please. So while there are a number of potential benefits associated with remote support, it's important to note that this technology may also pose a number of unique challenges which require attention and management. And so here you see on this slide a very high level and non-exhaustive overview of some of these risks, grouped accordingly under risks associated with communication failures, such as signal loss and signal latency, and human factors considerations, such as managing remote driver situational awareness, distraction, fatigue, etc. It's important to note that safety risks may vary significantly depending on the remote application in question and the complexity of the driving environment. As mentioned earlier, remote driving is likely to pose the greatest range of safety challenges, but some of these considerations may equally apply to remote assistance or other remote applications as well. So recognizing that this technology continues to evolve, we encourage industry to always take a graduated approach to remote support testing, where, as discussed before, complexity and risk are incorporated in a gradual, iterative fashion. This includes, for example, thorough validation testing in controlled environments before considering the testing of these technologies in more complex ones, including public roads. So that concludes an overview of our updated testing guidelines, and happy to answer any questions on that as well.
Thank you, Andrew, for that presentation. My question is, in this testing guidelines, do you specify or ask the developers to ensure that they are tested for children, infants, babies in car seats, and women as well? Because typically when vehicles are tested, they're designed for men and they're not considered the safety of all types of individuals that would be in these automated vehicles, as well as age.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I think this is a very critical issue because, automated vehicles are being proposed as this new mobility solution for often underserved populations. And so it's important that we're really thinking about the human-centered needs, right, of the technology. So this is something that we do address both in the trial guidelines as well as in that safety assessment report I referred to earlier. I should also mention that Canada is also a major proponent of this at the UN, where we're actually proposing that a series of guidelines be developed on human-centered needs and making sure that kind of equality of considering the needs of all users is a very underlying principle. And so this is something we're hoping to push further at the United Nations in the months to come.
Thank you.
Hi, Andrew. Michael Turpin here. Just a quick questions in regards to Canada and the rest of the world. And I'm just wondering your take on SAE and international standards for testing on ADAS and ADS and how they play into Canada's role.
Yeah, certainly. So a number of our experts are very, very involved in the development of those standards. So some of the human factors experts I referred to earlier are very, very involved in development of human factor standards. We have representatives that are helping to inform updates to J3016, which is the famous standard that lays out the taxonomy regarding automated vehicles. So a lot of engagement in those organizations as well. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
So our next presenter is Michael Stewart. Michael is a recent MSc graduate from the University of New Brunswick and currently works for the provincial government in PEI. After teaching high school physics and maths for 6 years, Michael decided to return to school and pursue a career in engineering. His research determines the performance of lane keeping assist technology on roads in New Brunswick throughout a calendar year. Michael? Yes.
Is that? Oh, okay, I'll probably just stand here. Everyone hear me fine? First of all, thank you for inviting me up here. Normally, my supervisor, Dr. Eric Hildebrand, would be coming and presenting the paper we co-authored, but he was unavailable, so the university sent me up. And just one comment before we start here. If you're wondering why I have like a big scratch and black eye, I played rugby 2 days ago, and sometimes that happens. So this is based on my research that I conducted. I started in May 2020 and then started my testing and data collection in August of that year, September, and finished and defended my thesis in November of 2021. Andrew actually just spoke a lot about this. So this is your SAE 316 levels of automation. Right now, the majority of technology available is at the level 2, level 3. This was focus of my research was a level 2, where I was evaluating the performance of lane keep assist or lane keeping assist in the province of New Brunswick. So the original hypothesis was that there was a large amount of roads in New Brunswick that were not able to support lane keeping assist or lane departure warning. in the province of New Brunswick, there's actually over 20,000 kilometers of highway road. So the primary goal was to provide an initial assessment of the infrastructure for the lane keep assist technology. The significance is to confirm the minimum standards in terms of contrast ratios, which is the daytime governing characteristic, and retroreflectivity value, which is the nighttime governing characteristic established by Carlson and other studies conducted. This study is unique as all other studies that have been conducted have been done on private testing facilities, except for in Astroads in Australia. They did it on their public roads as well, but their weather, climate, and what they experience throughout a calendar year is not even close to what happens here in Canada. The edge characteristics as well, previous studies have just evaluated paint and line marking, where this study looked at paint, line marking, your combination of solid and dashed white and yellow marking, as well as curbed, gravel, crushed rock, and grass edge of roadway. And as I mentioned before, conducting this on public roads, especially in New Brunswick, where you can have in the summer 40-degree heat and then minus 40 in the winter, snowstorms, thunderstorms, everything. And then the public traffic, the deterioration of the line markings was noted as well, where you'll see some pictures of the line markings completely deteriorated. So my research approach was I had to create a route that would be representative of the highways and different levels of freeways, arterials, collectors, and locals in New Brunswick. So I did that, and it was around Fredericton because that's where I was living. And also I needed to have a volunteer with me and rent cars from Enterprise to do the testing with. So I created a road information sheet once the route was selected, and this was used to record the weather, any glare, any traversing shadows, if there's any salt, dirt, ice, debris accumulation on the road, on the edge, and any general comments or anything that's important to the lane keep assist performance. First, I did a technology comparison where I used 4 different auto manufacturers and drove them all under near to ideal conditions, which is sun, no glare, no traversing shadows, no precipitation as per Carlson. And then I used a 2-tail t-test to show that there is statistically no difference in the mean averages of their performance. There was with Chevrolet vehicles, the horizontal curves, different auto manufacturers can set the curve radius on what it will actually accompany. So on some sharper curves for a Chevrolet vehicle, the system just shut off immediately. It didn't even try. Where Ford, Hyundai, and Toyota has their own systems, they were able to go. So the primary difference was center line markings. My main focus was edge of roadway, so I proceeded with a Hyundai vehicle. That was the first part. The second part was the lane keep assist data collection. And so this was done with a volunteer, friend of mine, and we would drive the roads. We would have a few different stopwatches ready. There was total time. There was left off, right off, which was when the machine was picking up the left and right parameters, whether it's paint, edge, curb, whatever it is. And then there was also wide time for any passing truck climbing lanes, or for some areas of roads after there's a turning pocket, the road could be too wide. So then I'd put that on to subtract the time, and then time under 60. Because for a lot of systems, you have to get to either 60 or 65 to initially engage, and you have to maintain a speed above 60 in order to maintain the lane keeping assist technology. So having the different times for the different roads, that was enabled me to determine the percentages of the lane keep assist for the center line and the edge, and they were always done separately. And then the last part was collecting the information for the contrast ratios and retroreflectivity. Retroreflectivity values were just collected using a reflectometer, and contrast ratios, I used a digital camera that matched with software called Luma from Syscomp that they used to evaluate light pollution. I had one of my friends who is a computer science wizard basically take their their technology and make a more user-friendly graph. And I'll show you that here in 1 second. And then after that, it was evaluating everything, determining my means in terms of my lane keep assist percentages, my contrast ratios, my retroreflectivity values. So this is the Luma software here. And you can see there's a little marker I would measure out 45 to 50 feet in front of the vehicle to take my picture and then measure my contrast ratio there, because that's the optimal distance. Really, these camera systems are looking anywhere between 10 feet to like 140, 150 feet, all at the exact same time. So they're doing a whole lot more than a human eye could ever do. And this is where down here, you can see the yellow line, the 2 spikes here, and then the road in between. Along the bottom is in inches, and on the top here is candelas per, there should be meters squared. That must have got cut off. And then I would take multiple points for the road next to the line and then use that to determine my value. And then the contrast ratio was this number over that number. My sample plan, this is just showing kind of the proportion, the highway classification and the different edge road characteristics. Again, not just looking at line markings. We know how line markings work. Well, how does curb, how does gravel, crushed rock, grass? And then you'll also see some pictures where we'll talk about the deterioration and poor condition of asphalt as well. So these 3 pictures are all on the same road in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So this is McLeod, it's on the north side. And so the first part has your white edge marking. Your second one is your gravel, and your third one is your crushed rock. And you can see the edge there is very poor condition asphalt, which you can imagine would not give the MVS anything to really detect. Also, the climate and environmental factors that play a huge role here. The first one, that is glare created, and the glare, it didn't matter if there was paint marking what the edge was, glare severely impacts lane keeping assist technology. The second one is snow covered. So there should be a yellow line and a white line there, but they're underneath. Something that did happen sometimes was a nice white line like that on the edge would actually cause the lane keep assist to engage. It thought, oh, there's a line. But having the middle part as well with snow, the lane keep assist would not engage at all here. And as I mentioned before, on public roads, our lines get deteriorated and completely obliterated. There should be a white line. You can very faintly see it there. So again, just having all of these in the study to see how it works on public roads. Here's the results for the lane keep assist percentages of detection. We can see over on the left side, the painted white edge lines. You will notice, and at 148, Route 148 in McLeod A, you can see the daytime mean is lower than the nighttime mean, and that is attributed to the snow storm that happened. That was actually like April 17th. Everything was clear, and then a snowstorm came through while I was testing, which was good because I needed that data. So that's the discrepancy there. Then you can see the curbed edge, gravel, crushed rock, and grass. All the highest detection would be your curbed edge here, 61% of the time, and then all the way down to your grass edge, crushed rock. And again, those roads there, your local roads, the quality of asphalt there, not very good, not a high priority in terms of maintenance, general or winter. And then for the curbed edge, 60% going one direction, Brookside just north and south, and the other one's about 50 or so. But then you look at the nighttime and the curb, not much retroreflectivity. And then going one direction, Brookside south, the position of the lighting actually caused shadows on the curb, dark spots, and then it actually decreased the ability of the lane keep assist as well. Here's a direct comparison of the center lines. So here's your center lines on all the exact same result, your average detection. An interesting one is Kingsley A and B, poor condition of asphalt. And it was actually the last painted in October. And when it was painted in October, I actually went there that day. Testing for that day was a lot higher, probably in the 90% detection range. And then I was back 1 month later, and the asphalt is a very poor and like almost like porous. And the center line in spots had almost just like disappeared after 1 month. And I don't know if that's directly related to the quality of the asphalt, but it was just very interesting to see. It was the last one painted, and then a month later, it was performing very poor again. These are the contrast ratios determined from the mean contrast ratios determined using the Luma software. The red horizontal line is the 1.6 minimum guideline established by Carlson. As you can see, any of the painted edge lines were above except for McLeod A. And again, that one dropped as well due to that snowstorm event that happened. We can see all the other gravel edge, crushed rock, grass are below the 1.6. The curb edge made it above the 1.6. But then we looked back at the detection and we're only at 61 to 50 some. So it's very sporadic, and it all depended on how much dirt was on the curb, on the road. If the asphalt had kind of gone to that grayish kind of tinge, then there's not a good contrast between the curb and the asphalt. Again, another direct comparison is here's your center line results. All of them except for Kingsley A and Brookside North. I know Kingsley A looks like it's right on the 1.6, but it's actually 1.59. And it was very poor performance the entire time. So for Centerline, you can see the immediate impact of having the paint on the road. So this is for Centerline results as well, just looking at contrast ratios and looking at our wet and daytime performance. Again, the red vertical line here shows that 1.6. If you look at where our clusters are and our percentages of daytime engagement, this 1.6 on our public roads is not going to be good enough. We need to be 1.9 to 2.0 to get up in that 95% range. Retro reflectivity. So on this graph, you have your center and white edge lines. You can see that your white edge line always returned a higher retro reflectivity value. And then for the roads that just had no paint marking, obviously there was no retro reflectivity. So those are just the center lines there. All of the roads past the 34 microcandela per lux per meter squared minimum established by Carlson. Again, just taking that data, looking at our daytime or our nighttime dry and wet and comparison. Again, we're all above the 34, but we don't want to be driving and only having our lane keep assist kick in maybe 68% of the time. That's not going to be good. So again, for this one, we're going to be thinking around the 65 to 70 as a new required minimum. So a couple things just to discuss, and then we can look at the numbers and get through some questions. Artificial illumination, street lighting, traversing shadows, speed variance did not impact painted edge markings at all. I was on roads that were from 50 kilometers an hour to 110 kilometers an hour, and the speed did not matter. The lighting, additional lighting in rural areas when there's paint there did not increase or decrease. So that could be an opportunity for us to save some money and not have that lighting at certain places. Glare impacted the lane keep assist no matter what. It didn't matter if it was on Route 2, which was one of the sample roads. If there was glare going into the camera, the lane keep assist immediately shut off. A very interesting finding also is the dash versus solid. On Route 2, the left lane, well, I was in the right lane, but the left parameter is a dashed white line. The right side is a white solid line. And there was no difference there. They performed at the same level of detection. Contrast ratios were a little bit lower in retro reflectivity with the dashed line compared to the solid line, but they were well above the minimum, and always there was almost 100% detection every time on Route 2. For non-painted edge lines, they are impacted by artificial illumination. I mentioned for the curb, if there's dark spots, that disengages the lane keep assist. Any traversing shadows, if we have a gravel edge, crushed rock, it impedes its ability. Glare, obviously. Speed is a concern if there is not a painted edge line as well. And then for our maintenance, obviously our general and our winter maintenance will have to change. Your higher level classifications of highways, they get the priority. They did better through the winter. And then in terms of restriping, the one where you saw the line completely obliterated, that was actually on a collector road. And so those will be some changes that'll have to be increase our frequency of painting, maybe even our frequency of winter maintenance as well. So overall, our freeways, arterials, and collectors had full lane keep assist engagement, 98.5 to 100%. Our local center line, 89%, not too bad, but not great. Still, there's 10%, 11% of the time where it's going to turn off. Edge, shoulder, depending on what it is, it ranged from 5 to 60%. Concrete curb, we had a daytime average of 57, nighttime of 29. Again, that relates to the lack of retroreflectivity from curb. Gravel, daytime 41, 38. The one time that gravel edge did well was right after they put fresh gravel down, and the detection rate for the daytime was 90. Went there the next month, there's dirt, rain, whatever. It was way down low again. So it was good for that one day right after. Crushed rock, obviously, and for the crushed rock and grass, we see a 12%, 6%. And that a big part of that is the poor condition of these local roads. And like I said, there's 20,000 kilometers of roads in New Brunswick, hard to get the maintenance to every single one. So our recommendations, our contrast ratios need to be 1.9 to 2.0 compared to Carlson's 1.6, which resulted in 95% lane keep assist engagement, and retro reflectivity. 65 results in 90% or greater, and 70 is 95% or greater. Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you, Michael. Is there any question? Yeah.
I have a question. Great presentation and great work. Like, it's interesting stuff.
Thank you.
So I'm curious now, you tested with a Hyundai, something
Yep.
you said? Okay.
Yep.
So like newer cars, or maybe not newer, but more expensive cars like Tesla and stuff, right?
Yes.
How does that compare? Because some of those cars people rely on to do like that self-driving. Are they just not able to do it on rural roads, or?
So I actually, before I started my my actual testing and data collection, I got to go drive one of my friend's mom's Tesla. And so Tesla, Toyota, and there's a couple other use their own cameras, their own systems, where a lot like Ford, Chevrolet, Hyundai are all with Mobileye. And they seem to be kind of leading the front in terms of how many companies they represent as well. I will say that Tesla, Elon Musk is pushing, he wants to be the first one to have that fully autonomous vehicle. So Teslas, yes, they do outperform our general public vehicles right now, completely different technology, but still running on the same principle. And he's also already included high definition mapping, which gives that the better edge, where this is just relying on contrast ratios and retro reflectivity.
So would results be like kind of within the same ranges if it's snowing or raining or there's glare?
I think, yeah, even for Tesla, and it's hard for me to say this, but like for glare or snow covered, I would still assume they would be in trouble. And that's where I know they just released I think it's their autopilot that they have, which is the level 3 autonomy. And it's kind of hard to say how much of an impact it would have on that, but glare for sure, because once it's blinding the camera, it can't see. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Michael. I just have a question about, I'm looking at this from the infrastructure side.
Yes.
And it always sort of comes back to that in my mind. Like when you're talking about pavement markings and, you know, what the retroreflectivity is and that sort of thing. It's like, are there any innovative products coming about from, say, 3M or anything like that, where, you know, it's something could be implemented within the infrastructure itself, as opposed to that would drastically improve? I'm sort of thinking winter, in the winter, if you had something that was easily picked up, is that?
So I know for retro reflectivity, and this is through Eric. Eric he's well known, has lots of connections. Instead of having glass beads, they're testing glass prisms to increase retro reflectivity. But for the non-painted markings, I haven't heard of anything yet. I have some ideas. One being whenever you put in a concrete curb and you spray it with that sealing compound, why don't we put the glass beads in that curing compound and then spray the concrete and then have highly reflective concrete? It's just an idea. You know, I did this for a year and a half, testing, driving, staring at the road, looking at them, thinking about it. But I haven't heard of anything where they're thinking about, you know, we have snow. How could we get along that? Maybe, you know, we have some elevated line marking up here, but especially for like concrete curb where the snow, ice, dirt, debris builds up, there's really no way around that with our current infrastructure.
I'm thinking of something perhaps magnetic that could be picked up any way other than visually.
Oh,
some sort of
I haven't heard of anything yet.
maybe we
No.
just invented that.
And that's there will have to be something, especially with the winter conditions. It's fine as long as the maintenance is, you know, it's there. Transcanada Highway was high priority. It was cleared right away. But the other roads, the collectors, the arterials that I was on, and the snow was completely covering the markings. There's nothing yet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Very interesting presentation and great work, as Robert said.
Thank you.
Just one question about because your research work focuses on road characteristics. Have you thought about how traffic characteristics could impact your results? Like, for example, the heavy vehicles. If the vehicle is a heavy vehicle, not a Toyota or a Tesla.
Yep.
How would the performance change? Would the performance change, or how would it?
So a big reason why I picked the Hyundai vehicle is every auto manufacturer can set their specifics on it, and the Hyundai seem to go through curves and even through like roads coming on where there's a break in the line. Chevrolet Ford would shut off and then turn back on, where Hyundai was able to project through, and they, you know, based on your speed, I'm not sure exactly. So I picked Mobileye because that kind of targets the most that's out there right now, where Toyota and Tesla are more specific. The Hyundai did outperform the Toyota whenever I did my initial testing.
Do you think the traffic composition of road could affect the lane detection?
Like what traffic is on the road?
Yeah, what traffic, like the heavy vehicles percentage,
Yes.
and what percentage is passenger cars and so on?
Yeah, I would say the ones that would have the higher heavy vehicles increases the deterioration. And also on Brookside, you saw if you're going north on Brookside, there's a lot of left turning pockets there. And so that's why the center line results were lower on Brookside, because there's a lot more people traversing. So I did see a big impact on the roads that did have the heavy vehicles on them more often. It definitely negatively impacted the Mobileye and basically deteriorated the markings faster.
Just a quick one,
Sure.
kind of on the same lines.
Yep.
Like would a SUV or a truck that's higher up have any impact on your results, or?
So when I did my initial testing, I actually had a Toyota Camry and I had a Toyota Sienna, the van, just to try the higher up. And I did have a Ford Escape, again, higher up. And then talking to auto manufacturers, and they said the vehicle is still looking out at the same area, and it would increase when you're looking up the angle. Obviously, you're going to be higher up and you're going to see, but it's still looking for the same characteristics. It's hard to say, does that make a huge difference or not? Comparing the Camry to the Sienna, they were virtually the same. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for both our presenters, Andrew and Michael. In lieu of the speaker gifts, we are happy to say that we are donating the monetary equivalent of the speaker gift to the CASP's Young Professionals Committee, which is known as the former Canadian Road Safety Youth Committee. And thank you very much again for attending session 2B, and have a great rest. Enjoy the rest of the conference.